All right, hey Vikings fans, welcome in to another episode of the Skol Hop. I am Austin, and we are missing Evan today. Scheduling issues made it so that Evan couldn't join us for this week's episode, but don't worry, we do have another voice that will be on. It's not just me and spouting off my own opinions. Friend of the show, Dustin Baker, has joined us for this week's episode, and it's been quite a while, too long since he's been on with us. So go ahead and sit back, relax, and listen in for my opinions and my conversation with Dustin Baker as we talk about the Vikings, the draft, the upcoming decision on the GM position, and maybe I get a little petty about the Adam Thielen situation. Here we go. All right, Skol Hoppers, we have, for the first time in quite a while, it's been way too long, but we've got friend of the show, Dustin Baker, with us here from Vikings territory and Vikes Now. Welcome in, Dustin. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's been way too long. When we were putting this together, I tried to remember if I was able to deliver some of my Kyler Murray takes on this show way back, because I was really lucky to have that light bulb moment in late November when the Vikings lost the Seahawks. It felt like we'd hit rock bottom. Kyler Murray had been softly benched, or so it felt, for the Cardinals. And I kept thinking, man, the only way this gets fixed for both sides, this guy comes to the Vikings. And I knew he said like 3 or 4 times in the past half decade that he grew up as a Vikings fan. So slowly, and then it looked like, hey, the Cardinals weren't even going to trade him. They were just going to release him. It was like this slow burn to Kyler Murray to the Vikings. And I am completely rejuvenated about this 2026 team.
Yeah, I think we had you on. It's a terrible mistake of ours, but I think we only had you on once during the 2025 season. I even made a joke when it was, because it was kind of early on, maybe a little bit mid-season, about when you came on and the Vikings weren't looking great. And I think I made a joke like, well, now that we've had Dustin on, the Vikings season's going to turn around. Like, that was the one thing. But, that wasn't the magic sauce. But I bet, I'll have to go back and listen to it. I bet if you had had that epiphany or thought, you absolutely would have brought it up, because it would have been a fun thing for us to talk about. And if you did, I probably would have been like, no, that's terrible. I hate that idea.
Yeah, well, Vikings fans, it wasn't just you. It took a long time for people to warm up to it. Even I was on board with trading like a second rounder, because I thought there's no way they were going to get him away for free.
Wow.
And then they did, and it's just this for a coach who has to win, I think, sooner rather than later, with O'Connell going into year 5 without a playoff win. It's just a perfect situation with Murray coming in, a chip on his shoulder. One of the worst organizations in sports doesn't want him. You already have this blueprint with Sam Darnold and the Vikings, how that worked. And Sam Darnold's like started from squat, like garbage, like a joke, a punchline. And Kyler Murray is like either good or decent, depending on your perception. There's just no other way around it. So starting from even a better spot than Darnold, and then all these weapons, and then Brian Flores' defense, I really think this can work. And I don't care what anybody says, well, he's not the ideal scheme fit. I get that. That's fine. But if Kevin O'Connell is really a good football coach, he's going to make his offense cater to what Kyler does best. This isn't 1992 where the player has to adapt to the coach. You could have the inverse, and that's what I'm so excited to see.
Yeah, I'm still warming up to the idea. I'm still, obviously, I'm a Vikings fan through and through. I want the team to win, not necessarily just the players. So I'm a JJ McCarthy fan, and I have been since they drafted him, and I want that to work out. But I also recognize, Kyler Murray coming in and winning the job, even if it's just for 1 year, or if it turns out Kyler Murray is the franchise guy for the next 12 years, that would be a good thing. Like, if that happened, it'd be because he won the job and he's actually really good and the Vikings had success. But JJ McCarthy, his career is not over. Maybe his Vikings career is not over. So if fans like me are out there and really want JJ to succeed, that dream's not dead yet. But it's funny you mentioned KOC coming in to his 5th year without a playoff win. It's not a unique idea. That's something us Vikings fans have been talking about since, I don't know who threw it out for the first time months ago. Like, hey, they're firing the GM. KOC, he might be on the hot seat. Maybe we can hit on that a little bit later. But I do have some more things I want to talk about before we talk about coaching or GM or anything. We do have the draft coming up. And Kyler Murray, JJ McCarthy, Carson Wentz, Max Brosmer. That room probably means Vikings aren't going to spend much draft capital, if anything, on a quarterback, which is okay. I think they have done what both Kwesi and KOC said they wanted to do at their end of year press conferences and have a competitive quarterback room. So, looking at the draft, us on the Skol Hop, our listeners will know that it's probably an every episode thing. We'll bring up something that friend of the show, Dustin Baker, posted an article on Vikings territory, and we'll usually spend seems like at least a whole segment, if not most of the episode, talking about our opinions on an article you or one of the other writers on Vikings territory has posted. And one that I found that I think you posted within the last couple of days was titled "The 5 Most Painful Vikings Draft Picks Ever." And I kind of wanted to dig in a little bit and kind of get your behind the scenes thoughts of that article. Because and we don't have to go through in this podcast and list all 5 players. That'd be counterintuitive to what Vikings territory would want. So listeners, go check that article out. We'll link it. It's really fun. I like when you do those kinds of opinionated articles that are based with fact and opinion, fact and observations. But of those 5. When you were writing that, were there any players that you really wanted to add to that list? But I get the sense maybe you set the 5 number pretty hard and fast, and you didn't want to go beyond that. But was there any player you wanted to add to that you just wouldn't let yourself?
Yes, I usually, it depends on the article. I try to cap it at 5 because in this age of digital media, sometimes folks' attention spans are catered towards, buzz short lists. If it's going to be a real deep dive on something, I would do 10, 12. But that's
Sure.
more for like vanity if I want to do like the top 18 quarterback options for the Vikings in the offseason, because I had something like that. But this one I thought I would keep it short and sweet. The ones that were upsetting to leave off, mainly because there's relative recency bias, which means like my fandom or your fandom
Mm-hmm.
would be Laquan Treadwell. But if you
Ooh.
take a step back and you're an adult about this, like he's really not that much of a bust. Like he is, but he's not. Like he's been around the NFL now for, my God, like 12, 13 seasons.
Yeah,
It's
I think he just
mind-boggling.
re-signed with the Colts for what will be like his 11th or 12th season if he's still
Yeah.
on the team this season.
When he signed that contract right in the middle of free agency week, like it was not a big deal, but it mattered.
Yeah.
I tweeted, he's the best bust ever. Like, I mean, he's the best bust that there is. Like, usually a bust busts the hell out of the league. But
Yeah.
Laquan Treadwell keeps finding, and it's not like he springs up and it's like, oh my God, Treadwell had 700 yards this year. He's just
Mm-hmm.
a good special teamer. I think a good WR5. For the Vikings' sake, we're spoiled because if there's one thing this franchise does well over these 65 years, it's draft wide receivers. That's like,
Yeah.
besides the Purple People Eater defense in the late 60s and higher 70s, like the thing that we do really well is find wide receivers, usually from the draft. So
Mm-hmm.
once they drafted Treadwell, there was kind of this, I think, cockiness from guys like me that were like, well, we know how to do this. And then he just never turned the corner. The Vikings gave him so many chances with that Mike
Yeah.
Zimmer team, and he was never more than just a guy. And that's not what you want when you get a first rounder. So because he didn't, I mean, we got really lucky that Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen picked up the slack. So it
Yeah.
didn't matter that Treadwell was a Vikings bust. But that son of a gun has stayed in the league for over a decade. And then when I was, let's see, my goodness, my early 20s, to replace Randy Moss, the Vikings drafted Troy Williamson, and he very vividly didn't work out. And then he didn't last in the league very much longer. He should be on this list if it was expanded, probably to 6, 7, 8. But I
Yeah.
will tell you this: I can't remember if I've said this on my show, on your show, excuse me. I talked to him on a podcast with Bryant McKinney about 4 or 5 years ago. It was
Really?
my favorite guest of all time. Like, and I'm not exaggerating. Like,
Yeah.
I remember my co-host Sally Spice. At the time, we were like joking to each other before the show, like, do we really want to talk to this guy? Like, we still were acting like kids about him being a
Yeah.
Vikings bust. And then we went through that episode, and he was so self-aware about how he wasn't that good. He talked about how anxiety had ruined his NFL career. and he was one of the most candid people I've ever talked to on a podcast. After the podcast, I messaged Sally. I was like, what were we thinking? Like, why were we acting like kids about it? We were like, oh my God. Because we talked to Williamson the week after we talked to Randy Moss, and it felt like
Oh
just this
man.
natural progression. And it was kind of a learning a moment as in my late 30s, I was thinking, I need to grow up. If I thought it was going to be a joke to talk to Troy Williamson and I was nervous because he sucked, like I need to grow up. And he was my favorite guest I've ever talked to as far as ex players go. But dollars to donuts, he would belong on a Vikings bust list.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with the Treadwell opinion there. But like you mentioned, when I kind of forget that Stefan Diggs helped ease that trouble too. But I always think of Treadwell and how great Adam Thielen ended up being and filling that void. So it would be like the Niners drafting Trey Lance and that being a
Yep.
bust. But oh no, they all of a sudden have oh my goodness, what's his
Brock
name?
Purdy.
What's
Brock Purdy.
Yeah, Brock Purdy. He just comes in and they have a $200 million quarterback now. Like it doesn't matter that much that they had this huge bust, similar
That's
with the Vikings.
exactly what
Yeah,
happened with Thielen and Diggs because they came up in the same year or two, that era.
yeah,
And that's why, how we continue to bitch about Lewisine. We don't really bitch about Treadmill, nor did we, because we're like, well, we got Diggs and Thielen. Like, why do we care about this?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I and it's also interesting you bring up Troy Williamson too, because he was the name that I always think of as like the biggest Vikings bust. Obviously, we have Demetrius Underwood and stuff like that who never
Yeah.
played, but Williamson, it just felt like okay, there's this huge Randy Moss hole in the team, and you go from having probably the greatest wide receiver in the league right now, and the next move you make is drafting a wide receiver, kind of like getting rid of Stephon Diggs. Now you have this huge hole at wide receiver. Oh no, you draft Justin Jefferson. But Troy Williamson, that was such a bust on the field. And I admittedly never heard him speak. He could knock on my front door and I wouldn't know who he was. I don't know what he looks like, but I just will never forget all those dropped passes. I think Pete Bursich recently, like in the last day, tweeted the video of the Tavares Jackson like 80-yard wide open touchdown. Nobody's around Troy Williamson, and he just like dropped it.
Hmm.
And Pete Bursich said, like, I'll never forget this. It broke my heart watching this play. Like, I feel that way.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I,
sorry,
I
where we
would
go?
say, I would say that I remember that would-be catch, that drop, so vividly because it almost felt in real time that it went in slow mo. Like that guy never had problems getting open,
Oh
and
yeah.
Tarvaris Jackson was not a consistent, deliverer of dimes, but
Mm-hmm.
that was a perfect toss. It was one of Williams's last chances, as it turned out, to get hot and to build on
Mm-hmm.
momentum. If he caught that, maybe he does something great the following week. But it wasn't like, oh boy, he didn't come down with a contested catch. It was like,
Yeah.
you or I or our grandmothers could have caught that, and he just didn't. And we were so starved at that time. The depression that we all felt about Randy Moss leaving,
Mm-hmm.
Adrian hadn't come aboard quite yet, so we just had this milk toast shitty offense that was like Brad
Yeah.
Johnson, and like we had to talk ourselves into Corin Robinson and Bernard Berrien being real badasses. So it was this inconvenient lull where we needed somebody to break out. And we're so used to Chris Carter and Jake Reed and then Randy Moss, like we are entitled to a sweet wide receiver. And that dude, just sadly didn't have it. But I'll see if I can dig up that podcast and send you a link sometime because he was such a cool dude. And he even admitted, like, part of his problem, like with his anxiety, was knowing that he was the guy that was going to replace Randy Moss. And
Yeah.
when you're a young man like that and you haven't figured out the world one lick, nor should you have by 21, like,
Mm-hmm.
poor guy, like, he just had everything stacked against him.
Yeah, and it's not like he was, an undrafted free agent that flashed in camp and earned a spot. Or even like the 32nd overall pick, still a first rounder. I think wasn't he like the seventh overall pick? Like
Yeah.
he on top of everything, it was a high draft pick, not just a guy the Vikings were like, oh yeah, you could fill this void. That was the pick made to fill the Randy Moss void. Like
Yeah.
I remember turning to my friend that I was watching this draft with, saying, "All right, they just replaced Randy Moss. We're all good now." Because I had never heard Troy Williamson's name before, but obviously they play highlights and stuff like that. They made him look like the next Randy Moss, and hey, here we got a Randy Moss spot open, so come fill it. So I do kind of feel for that Troy Williamson. It sounds like he's a good dude. If you do find that link, maybe I can do some digging myself and try to find that. That would be fun to listen to for sure.
Yeah, yeah, he was awesome, and I really wish it worked out for him, especially after talking to him, knowing how good of a dude he was and is.
Yeah. Again, you're talking about a former Vikings wide receiver who you had one opinion on, and then your opinion changed. Right now, I'm kind of going through opinions about a very recent former Vikings wide receiver that I'm kind of salty about. I mean, Adam Thielen.
Hmm.
We've mentioned his name a couple of times. I'm still like I was on board with Adam Thielen. I think he and I are within a few months of age of each other. We grew up rooting for the team. His story was amazing. And then, when his Vikings tenure came to an end the first time, it seemed like a Vikings decision. We saw the
Hmm.
decline in play. He wasn't the $20 million wide receiver anymore. So it's like, all right, I get it. It makes sense. It was a great run, really fun to watch, but like it makes sense. All right, go do better things with other teams. But then this year, when it seems like he just asked for his release because he wasn't getting playing time, I'm still kind of salty about that. Maybe I will have a similar Troy Williamson mindset change in the future about Adam Thielen, but for right now, I'm still kind of salty, and that's probably my immaturity showing through a little bit too. I probably shouldn't care so much about it.
Well, there was really no way that we could know that he was washed, even if he still doesn't admit it. I don't think I would have like preemptively paid a fourth rounder for Adam Thielen, even though at the time I was like, I shrugged my shoulders and I was like, well, if that's the price to get a WR3,
Mm-hmm.
so be it. And then I thought that the hometown angle, reunion angle, would end fun. I didn't think the Vikings would start the season 4-8. And I didn't like the biggest thing here is I didn't think Thielen was utterly washed. Like he hadn't shown any
Yeah.
evidence of that. But man, if we didn't get heisted and fleeced there by the Panthers, I think ultimately the Vikings recognized that he didn't quite have it anymore, and he hadn't recognized that yet. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, he didn't get very much playing time. And I don't. I think an athlete has a hard time stomaching that they don't have it anymore. Like, not that he was being stubborn, but I just don't think that he realized that I'm not that good anymore. So
Yeah.
I guess good for him. He got to go lose a playoff game with the Steelers. If that's what he really wanted. It'll take I don't know however many months or years, but I think you'll get over it, and then he'll be in the Ring of Honor and life will go on. But he did kind of have a junior villain arc on his way out, which CJ Ham didn't do that. Harrison Smith for damn sure isn't doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the CJ Ham and Adam Thielen had that joint retirement press conference, and when the Vikings tweeted about it, me from the Skull Hop, I tweeted back and said something like, "Yeah, we just need CJ Ham. You don't have to have anybody else in there." And a Vikings employee kind of replied to me and was like, "Hey, you don't know how this works. Like CJ and Adam both really wanted this. Adam's a great guy, kind of like putting me in my place a little bit." And I replied back, a little immature, but like, "Hey, this is just how Vikings fans feel right now. Like we're a
Yeah.
little salty, but you're right, and I recognize it. Weeks, months, years. Eventually, we will all still be right back in the Adam Thielen fan club, and it'll all be back as normal. But yeah, it's still pretty fresh for me, at least.
Yeah, it will remain weird that to an extent, I know that if you really believe that you still have it, then he got to Pittsburgh and didn't do anything. But
Yeah.
he must have thought, I can go win a Super Bowl somewhere. And if I'm not playing here, get me to, I don't know who at the time would have been Super Bowl front runners, the
Hmm.
Eagles. Like, get me to somewhere so I can try to, I can understand that to an extent. But yeah, I'm with you that it was a strangely sour departure from a team that he loves, will continue to love, and then a team that loves him as well.
Yeah. All right. So now looking at what's going to happen here in the next, what is it, 3 weeks from now, the NFL draft.
Two and a
Um,
half, man.
2.5, man. I think because I get so excited about these things and I look forward to them so much, and 2.5 weeks is a long time. I kind of make myself forget about it and try to focus on other things.
Yeah.
So thank you for shattering that glass for me. And that's all I'm going to be thinking about for the next 2.5 weeks. But more Vikings specific focus. The Vikings do have a first round pick this year. They've got actually a decent amount of draft picks this year so far. Um, what do you think is more important? I think we've all seen similar names be mocked to the Vikings, similar positions, and it seems like running back, safety more often than anything, and defensive tackle. To you, Dustin Baker, what should be the most important thing for the Vikings to look at in the first round this year?
Are we at a point where everybody agrees that it's best to draft the best player available? Like, I
Yo,
think
yeah,
that, yeah,
absolutely.
I think some people love to say that, like, and then it's like, well, you draft the best player available that I think is the best. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think, yeah. So if you're gonna lean into that, then the sky is the limit. Like, if you're truly leaning in that philosophy, then you're talking about guys who could be there like Jordan Tyson or Kenyon Sadiq, because those might be the best football players on the board. But I have a hard time in believing that general managers, all of them, down the line, fully believe in BPA. Like, they will tell us after the pick, like, well, Donovan Jackson was the BPA on our board. Like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then it just kind of goes conveniently with what they're saying. I think I won't have any qualms with them drafting not reaching, but drafting a Jermod McCoy, a cornerback, Dylan Thieneman, who's like a 95% of all Vikings or any mock
Yep.
draft right now for the Vikings, or Peter Woods. I think would have to be the consensus pick at 18 if you're going to get a defensive tackle. I will understand all of those picks. I think my only beef is usually safeties. Like, I understand that I'll instantly be excited about Thieneman, but they're usually not like a premium position. Like, when free
Hmm.
agency rolls around, you can go get a really good safety for 8 or 9 million bucks. To get a really good edge rusher, you have to spend 25 million. So
Yeah.
I'm little reluctant to, with a full throat, endorse a safety. If they wanted to trade back, which they're probably due to do, and then draft the Toledo guy, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, I'd be okay with that.
Oh, yeah.
But trust me, I've, from a predictive angle and an endorsement, I've thought about this way too long, and I still have 2 weeks to go. I would say most likely right now is a slight trade back, and they end up with one of the safeties. Or if they wanted to keep it pretty elementary, Peter Woods makes sense, because if you look at this, and I think we'll talk about Dexter Lawrence later on, the
Hmm.
Vikings let go of two of their starting defensive tackles, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave. They have signed zero replacements, even though DJ Reader is out there, Christian Wilkins, who I still think has a path to Viking. They haven't signed either one of those guys. So I think the evidence is there for a defensive tackle. If they cared about a defensive tackle last year to sign two of them,
Yeah.
and then haven't signed any, it feels like their actions are showing that an interior defensive lineman makes the most sense. But left up to me, with the way the board currently looks, I would love Jordan Jeremiah Love, excuse me, to slide down to, like, I don't know, number 10 or 11, and then the Vikings could climb up with not an outrageous package, because I just have this dream scenario of the Kyler Murray experiment working, and then, oh, by the way, you have Jeremiah Love, in addition to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkins. And you could get a WR3 like Tyreek Hill. I mean, imagine Kyler Murray,
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jeremiah Love. Like, it wouldn't even matter how good the defense is, because we know it's going to be average with Flores. So I
Hmm.
would love for Jeremiah Love to be gettable, probably a pipe dream. I think right now my endorsement is, if Kenyon Sadiq is there, you don't leave him on the board, because TJ Hawkinson will be a free agent next year. And I dug this up on accident today. The Vikings have never drafted a tight end in round one in franchise history.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess what wasn't Kyle Rudolph like a second round pick?
Yeah. Hmm.
And then Hawkinson was like the eighth or ninth overall pick, but obviously he was with the Lions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that is interesting. I probably would have failed that trivia question if you
No,
if you
I
had
would have
asked me
failed
if
it.
they
I would
ever.
have failed it one day ago because I thought Joe Sensor, a dude from the early '80s, I thought maybe he was a first rounder, but no, he was a second rounder. So, last year the Vikings, or in 2024, the Vikings hadn't drafted an edge rusher since Erasmus James, one of our buddies from
Oh
the last
man.
segment, and it was overdue for them to draft an edge rusher. They did it with Dallas Turner, and you start to look like, all right, what other things are overdue? They haven't drafted a running back in the first 4 rounds since Kenny Nwangu, and even he wasn't really a running back.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think history probably needs to correct itself, and I don't know if I like if we're watching the draft. Let it probably be what 9 p.m. on that Thursday night, April 23rd, and if Kenyon Sadiq is there and the Vikings trade down or don't take him at all,
Hmm.
I'm going to remember that and see how Sadiq does throughout his career in the pros because I think he has the juice to be really good. A lot of tight ends, especially in this class, they don't really block. They got to learn that when they get to the NFL. This guy already does that. And he's
Interesting.
also, a pretty sweet pass catching tight end. So I think Sadiq right now is where I'm leaning towards my endorsement. And I'll lock in a final one here right before the draft.
All right. That's interesting too, because you just think about the Vikings' current tight end situation. I know Hawkinson, he's probably going to be a free agent, unless he just lights the league on fire this year. It'll probably, his Vikings tenure, for me, unfortunately, will probably be done after this season. I'm a big Hawkinson guy. I'm an Iowa fan, so that makes
Oh,
sense.
perfect. Logan
But
Jones, baby, get that center.
exactly. And apparently he might be, not even a first round pick. So he could be had as well. But Vikings and tight ends, if they were to spend a first round pick on a tight end, they would have first round pick tight end. Hawkinson, who, what is it, 15 million or something he's going to make this
Yeah.
year, or whatever his cap number is. And then, my goodness, I can't remember. What's the tight end two guy? Um,
Josh Oliver.
yeah, Josh Oliver. He's for a tight end, he makes decent money, and definitely for a tight end two, he makes decent money. It's something like $10-ish million a year. Um, Fact check me on that, people in the comments, and let me know how wrong I am about that. But that'd be a lot of investment into the tight end position. Which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It would just be interesting to kind of roll into
Well, it's
2026
the
with
same.
that.
It's the same mindset. Like normally, I would be right there with you, thinking like a tight end. Like really,
Hmm.
we have all this other stuff we need. But in 1998, the Vikings had Chris Carter and Jake Reed, and they didn't need Randy Moss. They did not.
Sure.
Roster was fine. It was a run-happy NFL. Hasn't transitioned yet. Randy Moss worked out pretty well. In 2007, Chester Taylor was coming off a 1,200-yard season. The Vikings didn't need
Yep.
a running back. They really didn't. They got one. Hall of Famer. So I try to, mature as an NFL thinker and think
Hmm.
if Sadiq is as good as he thinks if he will be as good as I think he's going to be, it really doesn't matter if you have Hawkinson and Oliver because we're talking about the 2028 and 2029 Vikings.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely right. And I whoever the Vikings draft in the first round or any round, I will probably have heard that name for the first time that night, unless it is Dylan Thiedemann or
Yeah.
some of the other names you've said. I'm just not a huge elite overall college football mind. If it was an up and coming Hawkeye that's about to be a first round pick, I'd probably know who he was. Maybe that's why I'm a big fan of Hawkinson, is because I watched him explode at Iowa, and then when he was about to get drafted, I knew he'd be like a top 10 pick, and I've always been focused on him, a fan of his. Um, Kind of more so overall talking about the draft. The Vikings, they've got Rob Brzezinski, someone Brevin Bain has termed the Brisness. Um, um, how much do you think, and maybe this is just a complete guess, that this will be a draft that is a Brzezinski production? Or will it be something, a collaboration with all the coaches and everybody around, and they all decide? Obviously, I'm pretty sure no matter what, Brzezinski's going to be the final one to make the call. But is it going to be more of like we're all piloting this ship, or is he the number one guy? And then after the draft, they'll focus on getting a full time GM.
This all stems for the very strange decision to keep Kevin O'Connell and fire Kwesi Adofo-Mensah.
Yeah.
Usually you get rid of people in a package deal and plug your ears. It hardly ever works just to fire the general manager.
Hmm.
So to me, Kevin O'Connell is the team CEO. Like he has to be because why would he keep his job? Now I know I think he's a wonderful coach. I'm glad he's still there, and I'm glad Kwesi is out because he couldn't draft. And I was willing to give Kwesi another go to see if McCarthy could blossom, but I don't think the Vikings could sit around and watch another draft.
Hmm.
And he was fired 5 days after Sam Darnold reached the Super Bowl. So I think somebody finally put it together that every single quarterback recommendation that Kevin O'Connell came up with was vetoed. That would have
Hmm.
got the Vikings to the postseason. And yeah, I think that is why Kwesi was let go. So we're in a really awkward spot, but it's not one that is foreign to Vikings history. For almost a decade, we had the triangle of authority with Rick Spielman when he was first starting out in his first 10 years, whatever Vikings coach was there, so
Hmm.
Childress or Leslie Frazier, and then the ownership group. So it was kind of like a group think where I'm guessing the coaches and the scouts brought forward the players. Ownership said, "Yeah, looks good to me." And then they had their little quabbles between the defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, and then Spielman at the time, my guess, would settle the tiebreaker. The Vikings don't have any problem doing the triangle of authority. They did it like for
Hmm.
almost 10 to 12 years. So I think we're right back to that. They're just not calling it that. Um, to me, Kevin O'Connell is totally accountable now for this entire enterprise. And I think Brzezinski is there because he's been a sturdy voice for 27, 28 years with the Vikings. My perception, which is not like, ironclad or concrete, my perception is that Kevin O'Connell is running the show and Rob Brzezinski is doing the money like he's always done. And then in the off chance that Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell disagree in round one, round two, round three, and they can't, find a happy medium, Brzezinski would step in and say, all right, I didn't think I'd have to do this, but I'm going to make the pick between you guys. That is my perception. It's really weird that the Vikings were late to fire Kwesi
Yeah.
and then just said, you know what, general manager, we'll find one of those after the draft, baby. I'm pretty sure they want to make sure that Rob has the stomach operationally to guide the ship in the way that they want for these few months. And so long as he doesn't like late to the podium like the Vikings were 20 years ago, like so long as he doesn't have fundamental breakdowns, I'm pretty sure it's going to be his job. I don't have that like on from a source or anything, but I don't think I can remember an off season where any sports franchise is like, yeah, we'll get a general manager when we get around to it. I think they
Yeah.
trust Brzezinski with the job.
All right. So that's your official prediction. Not
Yeah.
not concrete in right now, as you think
Well,
Brzezinski has every
because
chance to get the job.
it doesn't like the Wilfs aren't going to be like, whoa, sweet, you got Dylan Thieneman. You're going to be our general manager now because you can't tell if a draft class does any good until 2 or 3 years down the road. So to
Yep.
me, it's not do we have to see a draft? Like he didn't like Brzezinski didn't even do anything in free agency. He got like a backup
Mm.
cornerback. Kyler Murray said, I want to play for you. And he's like, sure. Like he hasn't done anything. So I'm guessing they just want to make sure that he has the leadership personality to handle the day to day, which it looks like he does. And then so long as he isn't a complete imbecile, that he will just be hired sometime this spring or summer. Like I guess they could do a full search, but they could have done it between January 30th and March 9th, the start of free agency. They could
Mhm.
have interviewed candidates for 2 weeks, hired the guy, got him up to speed, and then that person would be all accountable. I think ultimately Brzezinski will stay on so long as Kevin O'Connell is the head coach. And let's say the Vikings flame out this year. They go 6-11. Everything is crap. I think O'Connell and Brzezinski, maybe Brzezinski wouldn't be fired, but O'Connell would be, and then Brzezinski might be put back into his financial, role. I
Yeah.
think it's Brzezinski's job.
Interesting. And that's probably the logical thought. I've been kind of thinking just off observation. I obviously have no knowledge outside of what my mind comes up with, but I've been wondering if maybe there's a chance Brzezinski, he's been with the Vikings for shoot almost my entire life. Maybe there's a chance he doesn't want that GM job because truthfully, I mean, unless you're a dynasty, how many times do we see teams after just a few years get rid of a GM? I mean, is there any GM in the league that's been with one team for as long as Brzezinski has been with the Vikings? And I know he's probably had a few different roles and gone up over his career. But I wouldn't be shocked if, Brzezinski, who's had a lot of stability and job security and, long-standing good relationship with the team. If he maybe is like, hey, I'll be the GM now, I'll do whatever you need, but I'd be fine going back to my role. Maybe get a nice little hey, thank you kind of a
Well,
pay raise, but
that is exactly why I think Kevin O'Connell is running the show. Like,
interesting. Okay.
if this was the Atlanta Hawks, if this was the Milwaukee Brewers, any other sports franchise, I'd be like, oh no, they need a general manager. But the Vikings proved to us that this ownership does not have a problem with a triangle of authority, and I think we're
Hmm.
just back to that. I
Yeah.
think that Kevin O'Connell yields the most power. And he's the guy that's going to basically call the shots. He's accountable as he's like a Belichick now, where he is the GM and the head coach. Rob continues his money magic. And then I think I think one of the reasons Flores came back is because now he has a louder voice of picking his own players. Like, have you noticed since Flores got here, every time we draft a defensive player, that guy doesn't even play? Like, I think it's because
Yeah.
Kwesi was saying, you take this guy, I think he's good. And Flores is like, nah, that guy isn't who I wanted.
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing that makes sense. Like, I want to get to a point in Vikings football where when a rookie plays, we're like, sweet. Like we don't have to do any celebrations about it. Right now,
Hmm.
when a rookie gets in the game in his first year, we're like, oh my God, Ty
Yeah.
Felton's on
No
the
way.
field. Yeah, we need to not have that mentality. So I think Flores will have increased input on picking his guys because we've become complacent. Well, our draft picks probably aren't going to work out, so we might as well trade them for Dexter Lawrence. Oh,
Hmm.
they drafted Ty Felton. Well, it looks like they got a special teamer. Like we shouldn't be thinking that way. We should be
Hmm.
like the Seahawks, where down the line of their first 5 picks last year contributed. That should be the standard.
Yeah. All right, you said his name today. ESPN or who was it? Adam Schefter kind of broke some news that Dexter Lawrence for the Giants. He's requested a trade from the team. He's not going to participate in their offseason program, or at least I think today was day one of their stuff, and he's not there. So of course, every fan of every team, when a player of Lawrence's stature becomes maybe available, because it's just come out that he wants a trade. The Giants haven't, to my knowledge, come out and said anything about it. They could come out and say like, we're not trading this guy, like don't even worry about it. Or they could be like, hey, yeah, we're open to everything. Um, let's be those fans right now. Should the Vikings well, I think they absolutely should, but should the Vikings take a look at what it would take to get Dexter Lawrence? Would it be a good fit? How would it even be plausible with what draft capital you'd have to give up? And then on top of that, signing a dude. I don't know his contract situation right now, but he can't be cheap, and he won't be cheap for long if he is. So, yeah, how does that look for Vikings fans that want Dexter Lawrence on the team?
I'll start off by saying it's a crappy start to the John Harbaugh era. They're going to lose their best player right out of the gate.
Hmm.
So yikes, but I'm sure he'll figure it out. He's a pretty good head coach.
Hmm.
All right, so there's only one argument against Dexter Lawrence to the Vikings, and it as constructed because of Kwesi Mensah's poor drafting habits. The Vikings are about the third oldest team in the NFL. The
Oof.
only argument that anybody should have against Dexter Lawrence for the Vikings is nope, we want to use that first rounder on some guy who's 21 or 22 because we want to start to go in the positive direction of youth. That's the only thing I want to hear, because Lawrence is 28. Defensive tackles can usually play, guys who are as good as him can usually play well into their 30s.
Hmm.
So I looks like the asking price is a late first rounder or a second rounder. I would love for the Vikings to somehow keep their first rounder. I don't know if
Hmm.
that's possible. I tweeted a proposal and it pissed the hell out of Giants fans. They were like, "Oh my god!" Like anytime you post a tweet or pose a trade on Twitter or on social media, the other team's fans think that you're nuts. That's all there
Well,
is to
we've
it.
been doing it
Because
for Justin Jefferson proposals for years now. So,
yeah, well, I thought mine was fair-minded and realistic because I basically assessed Dexter Lawrence's value exactly how the reporting has come out: a late first rounder or an early to mid second rounder. He's 28. He had an injured elbow last year. He hasn't recorded a sack in quite some time. So those are the downfalls. Um, his guaranteed money has run out. Anytime your Pro Bowler or fringe Pro Bowler has no more guaranteed money left in their contract, you need to expect that he's not going to play for your team. He's going to squawk, or you're going to hear trade theories about him all spring and summer. That's just the way that it goes. Now, if you're a regular old player, you don't have that clout, but when you're Dexter
mhm.
Lawrence, you do. Dexter Lawrence is intriguing for all 31 other teams for one reason. He is a nose tackle who also gets to the quarterback. Usually, nose tackles are one trick ponies. They stuff the run, maybe get a couple pressures here and there. Dexter Lawrence does it all. Now his next contract will probably pay him between 25 and 30 million bucks. That's not going to
Oof.
be cheap. But I will say if the Vikings believe they can find it in the extended budget, you I don't know if you tear up his contract or you just extend the current one, you can find a way to put the cap hits in 2028 and 29. Like Vikings do it, all the teams do it. If they perceive themselves as, Super Bowl contenders right now, there's a way to get this done. So I would love it. If they can find a way to get Dexter Lawrence, that's one way to replace Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave pretty emphatically while not
Hmm.
reducing Jalen Redmond's playing time. But I will hear the argument that says, you know what, here's what we want to do. We want to draft Peter Woods or we want Dylan Thieneman because we should be done with 29-year-olds. We want to get younger. That is a very fair argument.
Yeah. Yeah, my knee jerk reaction, maybe just because I'm a jaded Vikings fan, is whenever these big name superstars become even slightly available, my knee jerk is like, no, I don't want the guy because he's going to cost so much, and we don't know if it'll work out, and they might as well draft somebody. So that was my knee jerk, like. I don't want the Vikings to get him because obviously he's good, but like it's not like he's Aaron Donald saying he's coming out of retirement and saying, I'll play for anybody. It's like that would still be. I'd take Aaron Donald right now. I think over almost anybody else. But I think it'd be fun, but for me, I would almost be jaded and negative about it if the news came out like, oh, the Vikings traded. I hadn't seen that his value was low first, high second. I'm kind of surprised by that. I think maybe his 2025 is dictating that. I would have guessed more,
Yep.
but at least that sounds doable. So yeah, money wise, age wise, those are probably the only negatives. And then, I mean, but if he was on the team, I'm a Vikings fan and I want the Vikings to win. So
There
it'd be fun.
is there is a compromise, my friend, and I teased it about 20 minutes ago. Just sign Christian Wilkins for about 4 or 5 million on a prove it deal, and then you can use the 18th pick on Peter Woods. Bada bing, you got two defensive tackles, one young, one not young. There's a
There
way
you go.
to compromise. And the only reason I keep bringing up this Christian Wilkins thing on the internet and on your show, this is Brian Flores' first draft pick ever in
Hmm.
Miami. I'm not doing this because, oh my God, I want the Vikings to get every cool guy who's on the free agent market. No, there is a plausible connection between
Hmm.
Christian Wilkins and Brian Flores. In fact, when Wilkins went through his bullshit last summer, somebody asked Brian Flores, and Egan about it, and he was like, "Oh, he's like, I love me some Christian Wilkins. Sad to see he got released. We always keep our ears open." Like he said the right things about the guy, and so long as Wilkins is done with his bizarre locker room thing or whatever it was, and he needs
Yeah,
to
I don't
prove
know
him.
about that.
Oh, he allegedly likes to kiss dudes. I don't know if it's on the head or where it is. Uh, People say he's a little zesty in general for the NFL. I
Mm.
really don't care. If he's ready to play football and Flores thinks he's a good fit, then he can be your, patchwork solution, or you don't have to trade for Dexter Lawrence.
And that's interesting. Like we were just talking about Brzezinski and the GM job. You could lead me to believe that Brian Flores has as much power, more power to affect the roster than he ever has outside of being a head coach for the Dolphins right now with his, that triangle of authority idea. I mean, he would be a part of that conversation to be able to say like, I really want this guy. And I think we've heard in the past too, like he was pretty instrumental in having Blake Cashman signed.
Greg
And I
Hinkle.
think Isaiah Rogers was another guy that it
Yep,
seems
that
like
was his guy.
Flores was pounding the table for. So, I mean, well, and probably every team, if the defensive coordinator says like, "I like this dude, we should look at it," you'd be a crazy team to just shoo away your defensive coordinator. Like, yeah, whatever. You're not the guy. I'm the guy. Like, but I would assume Brian Flores has more power now than he ever has. Like I said, outside of being a head coach. So that would be interesting. Obviously, the Vikings need to address that position for sure because their two Plan A's from last year didn't work out. Um,
Yep.
Another guy that it seems like we can't stop talking about this offseason, Jonathan Grenard.
Hmm.
Seemed like immediately there was hot talk, weeks and weeks ago, like, oh, he could be traded tomorrow, and it could be, it could be even a first round pick if the deal was right. And then talk about that, at least on Twitter and stuff, kind of quieted for a while. It seems like in the last couple of days, it's like, well, maybe there could still be a deal out there. What do you think? Is ESPN right in what they want that Grenard gets traded away? Are the Eagles going to pick up the phone? Do you think Grenard's going to be on this team, or is he going to get traded away?
I think this will end in a similar fashion to the Daniil Hunter sagas. There was a couple summers where he would hold out or appear to hold out, and
Hmm.
then they would just kind of add more money onto the following year and call it good. That's how I predict this thing will end. So here's where we're at. Remember that thing I said 5 minutes ago that when your Pro Bowler has zero guaranteed dollars left in their contract, they squawk,
Hmm.
they ask for a trade, or you see internet articles about them about trade. That's what's happening with Grenard. 2 years ago when he signed his contract, 19 million per year, that was absolutely fair market. The NFL market has since reset itself twice, and Micah Parsons is making 47 million, and he plays Grenard's position. So yeah,
Hmm.
you're Grenard who thinks you're a top 15 edge rusher. You should be getting paid closer to 27, 28, 29, or 30 million. That's the way it works. His problem? 3 sacks in 12 games. How the hell can you go into a boardroom or whatever it is and say, I had 3 sacks. I'm a top 15 edge rusher. Those things
Hmm.
don't, mesh. However, he had a lot of pressures. He's a good locker room guy. So usually, if you're contending for the postseason or Super Bowl, you're not in the business of subtracting edge rushers. You're doing the opposite. You're hoarding those
Hmm.
sons of bitches because that's how you get through the playoffs is with edge pressure. So I think because this is the Vikings, they're always all in. I think they will find a way to compromise here. The Trayvon Walker contract over the weekend, I think, really helped this because he is 4 years younger than Jonathan Grenard. They have similar production, and
Hmm.
he got 27 million per year, which for a while there I was thinking, God, is Grenard asking for like 35 or something? Like, why is it this difficult to just extend the guy? They had no problem doing it for Van Ginkel last year, like no drama whatsoever. Boom, 23 million. Shut your mouth. Play for the Vikings. He did. I don't know why that isn't happening with Grenard. I think what happened is he presented them, or Drew Rosenhaus, that super agent, presented them with the number, and they're like, "Ooh, I don't know. You had 3 sacks, my man."
Yeah.
And then somebody freaked out, was like, "All right, well then trade him." And then the Vikings like, "All right, we'll see what we can get." So I'm guessing they floated that to the Eagles or the Colts, and the Colts were like, "I'm not paying him 35 million per year. I'll give you a second rounder, but he's not getting 35 million." And I think that cooler heads prevailed. I really think the Trayvon Walker extension helped because it brought everybody back to earth. Like, not every guy is
Hmm.
going to get Aiden Hutchinson's 46 million. So I think that this will resolve itself peacefully. If he gets traded, then you're going to have to go to free agency for, AJ Espinosa or Jadeveon Clowney, or use that first rounder on like Keldrick Falk or somebody, because I think we're past the days of just having two edge rushers.
Hmm.
And, Dallas Turner is progressing in the right way, but we don't know for sure if he's going to be Grenard esque. So my prediction is that they find a way to bring Grenard back at a reasonable price, which is like 26, 27 million.
Sweet, I'd be all for it. I'm a Grenard fan. When he's healthy, he's really good. Yeah, he didn't have the sacks last year, but man, he had a lot of. It seems like a lot of defenders on the Vikings last season had a lot of almost tackles, and he had a fair share of almost sacks. But I think when he's good, he's good. And yeah, I think, like you said, he's an elite pass rusher, and you got to keep those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that's helping this situation is that we haven't seen anything negative from him, at least publicly. We haven't seen the Schefter tweet where it says Grenard is asking for a trade, so maybe there are cooler heads in this conversation, and it's not so much about him not wanting to be with the Vikings. It's more
I
fair
think it was a
deals and
standoff.
market value. Yeah, and that's fine. It's a business. They say it's a business all the time. I always say I think every player should advocate for every penny they can get while they're playing because they have such short careers to make all this money and they're putting their brains on the line. So get that money. But yeah, Grenard's good. I'm a fan and I want the Vikings to keep him. Hope it works out the way you're saying, and It's not my money. I don't care if these guys are making tons of money. So as long as they're winning, that's all I care about. And speaking of winning, we've kind of said this a couple of times since we've been talking here the last almost an hour now. Um, we've mentioned Kevin O'Connell and how he hasn't won a playoff game yet. There seems to be this cloud over the heads of the Vikings that I kind of get the feeling that Kevin O'Connell. He's not on the hot seat right now. I don't think it's one of those like the leash is short. You just said, and I kind of agree. He's basically the CEO of the team right now. But it does feel like if the Vikings don't win a playoff game this upcoming season, Kevin O'Connell does not come out of that equation looking too great. I mean, the Vikings just fired the GM I think his extension just started taking an effect as far as money. So the owners have kind of proven like, all right, we're done with this BS. It'll be a costly decision, but if we got to fire somebody who needs to be fired, we'll fire them. I don't think KOC's there yet, but without a playoff win, I think that could be much more of a buzz. Do you agree with me? Do you think his seat maybe isn't hot, but it's getting a little bit warm?
No, I disagree. I think the seat is hot. Not
Oh.
like not to the point where we have to, chew our fingernails every game wondering if he's going to get fired. But it is so rare, my friend, for a quarterback or a head coach to go into year number 5 without a playoff win.
Hmm.
And I think it's just because he's a swell dude. Like he's able to whisper to quarterbacks who aren't rookies. Like he's able to do every single one of them that's not a rookie. He can cook with the rookies. Don't ask him to do that. That doesn't work. So
Hey,
he
JJ's
carries
not
a
a
great.
rookie anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. So he carries a locker room. I think the leadership is there. I like his offensive play calling. There's a lot of people that don't like that anymore. But I think he's on the hot seat because if they go 9-8 and miss the playoffs, or 8-9, and you have this interim general manager in Rob Przinski, you haven't won a playoff game, 8-9 or 9-8 without a postseason appearance, something would have gone wrong.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you can just keep running it back over and over with the same guy. Now, thankfully, I think the Vikings are going to be really good. I would say to keep his job securely, they have to get to the postseason, and then whatever happens in that playoff game, like if there's some fluke ending that nobody could have ever predicted in their life, I don't think that O'Connell would be fired. But if they look like idiots in the first playoff game or they don't make the playoffs at all, I would say there is a plausible chance that he would be fired on Black Monday. And I love Kevin O'Connell. I hope he doesn't get fired. I trust him.
Hmm.
Like the only thing I'm worried about at all is that the NFC North is suddenly really, really competitive. This isn't the old days where you can just laugh at two of the other teams.
Yep.
They're all competitive and they all think they're going to win the NFC North. But I will say that for accountability's sake and full job security, very least get to the postseason and probably win a game.
All right, let's get a few steps ahead of where we should even be in this conversation right now. But let's pretend, we are in Black Monday, January 2027. Vikings didn't make the postseason. Kevin O'Connell is getting fired. Mike Tomlin is not a head coach in the league right now. Do you think he'd be a fun or even, option guy that the Vikings would look at as a head coach in the league?
Oh yeah, I mean he fits the Vikings perfectly. He's perfectly. He's guaranteed to go 9-8. That's music to the Vikings' ears. Like seriously, that's like what their mantra is. He got his start as a defensive coordinator for a season 20 years ago now with the
Mhm.
Vikings. I think there's, a mutual admiration society between the two. The only problem with that is it's that bullshit where you're gonna have to trade for him, like because
Oh
he's still under
yeah,
contract with
yeah,
the Steelers. It's this, and remember, we don't even talk about this anymore. The Saints got a first rounder for Sean Payton, and I'm not going to be
yeah.
doing any of that. Don't ask me about that on any podcast. I'm not trading a first rounder for a head coach. But if there's some way that he can be released from that, I think you would hear that. Ryan Flores could be an option. Like, let's say the defense hums and Kyler gets hurt and McCarthy sucks or something like that. I think
Hmm.
Flores would be at the top of the list for promotion. And then I would like Grant Udensky to get an interview. He was the Vikings assistant head coach, and now he cooked as the OC in Jacksonville. I
Hmm.
don't think we'll have to talk about this because I think O'Connell will resurrect or I guess salvage his time in Minnesota, and we won't have a rerun of last year. Last year will always bug me for a very long time because I still do this. Like, I'll be talking to somebody about the Vikings, and I'll say, "Well, yeah, after such a shitty season," and I'm like, "Wait a second, they finished 9-8." Like, it
Yeah.
just felt like a horrendous season, but they
Yeah.
won their last 5 games. Screwed up the draft pick. It really wasn't that bad of a season when it was all said and done. But yeah, I would expect Tomlin to be there so long as the trade price isn't outrageous. Brian Flores to be right in the mix, and then the field would thicken by then because there's going to be another hot shot offensive guy. There's probably some dude from the Vikings past we're not even thinking of. There would be
Hmm.
options.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy. You say 2025. I have the same thoughts. Like, man, it's such a garbage season.
Yeah, no.
Everything went wrong. The pets' heads are falling off. Everything was terrible. And it really wasn't. Like, you could argue they were one poorly defended kickoff away from making the playoffs, or at least being more into that conversation. That kickoff that the Bears wide
Duvernay.
receiver returned
Yeah,
and
well, the
set
only
up.
difference is the Packers would have played their starters in Week 18, and
That
that
is
game would
true.
have been for all the marbles, believe it or not.
Hmm.
But yeah, it really did come down. I remember leaving that game thinking that was the game, that was the one we needed to win. And then a couple weeks later, I was like, oh, maybe I was just too dramatic. It turns
Yeah.
out that was the game. That single tackle that somebody needed to make would have given them a puncher's chance, as it turned out,
Hmm.
to win the division in Week 18.
Yep. Yep. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. We every year we can point to two or three scenarios like that where, man, if he just would have made that one tackle, or if he wouldn't have dropped that one interception, things would have been way crazier. But that's why football is so fun to watch, is because things
Mm-hmm.
can change so dramatically just based off one or two things. And we're always saying, hey, there's always next year. So that's why I love it, is because it's so close. You're always that close to getting to to get into the promised land. And for Vikings fans, it's never worked out. At least not yet. Maybe 26 is our year, and we'll all be wearing Kyler Murray jerseys, and JJ McCarthy and it'll be fun.
That's the thing. Like, we talked about 9-8 last year in a season that felt dreadful. They finished 9-8, and now they have Kyler Murray. Like, there were so many games last year that I either tweeted or told my wife, we just need an average quarterback and we'd be winning by 10 points. Like Seattle, like, believe it or not, that game was winnable. Sam Darnold did nothing special in that game against the Vikings. Zero. It looked like one of those games where he wanted to have like a complete turd, but we
Hmm.
didn't allow it because our offense couldn't do anything. So if you look at a team that went 9-8 with the NFL's fifth worst quarterback play per EPA, per dropback EPA, like the fifth worst quarterback play, the team finished 9-8. Kyler Murray is now in town. Even if he's like the 15th best quarterback, the Vikings are going to win 11 or 12 games based on the
Hmm.
numbers. So that's another reason that I am reinvigorated about Kyler Murray being here, is that we're not starting from, oh boy, we're 3-14. Maybe Kyler can drag us to respectability. No, they were this close to being a playoff team.
Yep. And quarterback play is only going to be helped out no matter who's playing. It's going to be Kyler, but no matter who's playing, just because the O line should look better. As
Yeah,
long as the
healthier.
Vikings can do something at the center position, I actually didn't hate how Will Fries played. Donovan Jackson, I thought, had a pretty good rookie year. Christian Darrisaw, he's one more season removed from that horrific injury, which it sounds like there was just some healing complications that were happening with that. So the more healed he is, the he's already shown. Darrisaw, I think, is probably the best left tackle to not have a Pro Bowl nod so
Mm-hmm.
far. And then Brian O'Neill, he's Brian O'Neill. As long as he's healthy, we don't have to worry about that. So I think the offensive line is going to be much more improved as far as on the field play in 26 than they were in 25, which is only going to help out the quarterback position too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dustin, you and I, we could keep going for another 5, 10, 15 hours just talking about the Vikings until the draft starts. But we probably shouldn't do that. So, um, I really appreciate you coming on. We in seasons past, we have had a really good rotation of about once a month. You
Mhm.
coming on and giving us your takes, and we need to get back to that because I
Hell
think the
yeah.
Skull Hop is better when you're on every handful of episodes. So invitations always out there, but I'd love to have you on more often if you're up for it.
Yeah, you should line me up for like that week right after the draft, and we can decompress what that hall looks like.
Yeah, that'll be really good, and I'll actually have heard those guys' names by then. So, and I'll
Logan
be
Jones,
convinced
baby.
they're all yeah, they're
Logan
all Pro
Jones,
Bowlers.
Iowa round 3 center. He's 25, or he's going to be 25. That pisses me off, but he should be
Yeah,
game ready at age 25 to be the Vikings center.
yeah. Well, I think the further we get away from those COVID years,
Hmm.
we'll start seeing rookies be more and more
Yeah.
younger than 25 again. But I think there's going to be a weird era where we see these 25-year-old rookies coming in. But all right, Dustin, where can people find you if for some reason they haven't already heard where you put out your stuff before?
VikingsTerritory.com is where myself and about 6, 7 others write daily, almost hourly. And then at Dust Baker on Twitter, that's the main one. And then my second book is on Amazon. It is called The Invaders. It is a suspense thriller that has like kind of political. Don't worry, it's not like a whack job book, but it has like governmental overtones. So I would suggest your readers go buy that on Amazon ebook or paperback. It's called The Invaders by Me.
Awesome. You were gracious enough to send me a copy. I still need to dive in, but
Good.
if it's anything near as good as the Motor Out was, your first book, I can't wait. I'm sure it'll be great,
Well, thank you,
and
sir.
I will give you my honest opinion. But honestly, I'll be shocked if it's anything less than great. The Motor Out had some fun twists and turns, and there was at least one point where I said, "What the heck is going on in this book?" So maybe I don't know. Maybe there'll be at least one twist in this next book. But I can't wait to dive in. Definitely, readers, go check really both of those books out. The Motor Out, your first book, and then The Invaders. Is that right? Your most recent one.
Correct. Hmm.
And it sounds like you've mentioned before you're gonna keep chugging these out. One or
Yeah,
two
book
a
number
year.
3 is about 30% done. That one
Nice.
should be out this summer.
Awesome. Are you going to do any audiobooks? You gonna read these aloud and post them up or anything like
No, I
that?
think I think if I get cool enough where these books catch on, then I can pay a service or some sort of AI to read them. I don't know that anybody wants to hear me reading it, but I have had that. My one of my cousins is hearing impaired, and so she keeps pounding the table like you got to do this. I'm like, yeah, I'm just a small timer first. Let me hit my groove, and then we'll get to all
Yeah.
that. But yeah, for sure that's got to be on my to do list.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm definitely more of an audiobook consumer, but when it's yours, I have no problem opening up the book and actually turning the pages and reading it like the Stone Age. But can't wait to dive in. Listeners, definitely go check out Vikings Territory, Vikes Now, Dust Baker on Twitter, everything else. It's Vikings Territory is my favorite place for Vikings news related content. So thank you, Dustin. Again, thanks for coming on. We'll definitely will have you on, if not right after the draft, within the weeks after the draft. I'd love to get your immediate thoughts on whoever the Vikings pick up, and then who knows, maybe we'll have more news on a GM situation soon after
Yeah,
the draft as well.
and the schedule in about
Um,
a month.
yeah, that's true. I always forget the schedule just comes right around the draft, and it's like, oh, hey, it's always a surprise to me. It's one thing I don't have to sit and look forward to. It's like, oh, hey, schedule day, and then what game am I going to go to? Because I usually get to one a year if I'm lucky. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, thanks again for coming on, Dustin. Fun as always. Was there anything else you wanted to bring up before we wrapped everything up?
No, I just got Skol, baby.